Hey, from New Jersey, it's the SNL Nerds, the show where two comics from New Jersey nerd out about Saturday Night Live. I'm your co-host, John Trumbull.
And I'm your co-host, Darren Patterson.
How you doing, Darren?
I'm doing good, John, because I'm looking at the laptop here, looking on my screen. Looks like we got ourselves a guest.
We do indeed have ourselves a guest. We have a very special guest, a friend of mine from the website that we both write for, Atomic Junk Shop. And he's also the author of Silver Riders, which you can find on Amazon. My friend, Mr. Greg Hatcher. Welcome, Greg.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much for being here. And we're having Greg here because this week we're covering the movie Starsky and Hutch, the movie version of the 70s TV show with Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson.
That's right. Came out March 5th, 2004. Directed by Todd Phillips. This was his follow-up to his big smash hit, Old School. And written by John O'Brien and Scott Armstrong. I looked both of them up. It seems like Armstrong written a bunch of other kind of movies in the same vein in the early aughts, such as Old School, Road Trip, Semi-Pro, Hangover 2. And also I found out that this movie, Thomas Lennon and Robert Ben Garant from The State did some uncredited work on the screenplay.
I know they're big screenplay punch-up guys, so yeah, that's not too surprising. I think they've done a lot of uncredited work on various movies. But Greg, we'll talk to you a little about Starsky and Hutch, but because we're an SNL podcast, we're also just curious, are you an SNL fan? What's your relationship with the show? How did you get started on the show if you're a watcher?
Saturday Night Live has been on for so long that it's like saying you're a fan of books or a fan of television. I'm old, so I tend to think of the earlier years. Probably my favorite period of the show was in the 70s because I have a lot of sentimental associations with it. Saturday nights, it was literally appointment television for me and my nerd posse. We'd all go over to my friend Joe's house, and PBS would run Monty Python at 11, and then at 11:30, Saturday Night Live would come on. So it was a big double whammy for us. And then
that's a great lead-in.
Yeah, it was perfect, especially when you're high school kids getting baked. And I mean, that was what you did on Saturday nights.
Saturday night in the 70s, you were pretty much required
pretty
to,
much,
right?
Yeah. And we were all nerds, so there really weren't girls to chase in our social strata. But we comforted ourselves.
I feel what you're saying.
Well, the thing that was interesting is back then it was still kind of an underground thing. It wasn't the cultural institution that it is today. Back then it was still sort of furtive and people didn't really know about it, and it wasn't until like the third or fourth season that suddenly everybody was watching it and there were catchphrases and stuff.
Right. I mean, that's a thing I've heard from people who were watching the show with the original cast in the 70s. It really was appointment television. And also it was like largely a pre-VCR age, so you couldn't
if you missed it, that was it. It was game over.
Today.
There was an LP, a vinyl record, that we all played to death. That was kind of a best of thing. And
so just like the audio of the sketches?
Yes, just the audio. It was like a comedy record.
Nice. Do you remember which sketches were on it?
Anna Freud was on it. I think the Bassomatic was on it. The commercial parodies. There were a couple of the commercial parodies. Nothing that really depended on a visual to sell it. So you didn't get Land Shark or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, I don't see Land Shark working in a purely
it was all verbal
medium.
humor. But it was pretty okay record.
That makes sense.
Okay. Did you have a favorite cast member?
Did I? Well, my favorite was always Dan Aykroyd because he was so insane and so versatile. And
it's a good choice.
We loved Bill Murray because of his oily lounge character. But,
Yeah, the Lounge Singer is still one of my favorites.
Oh, Nick. Yeah, Star Wars.
Yeah.
Bar Wars.
But
Yeah, and I mean that was such a solid cast, and it's such a smaller cast than what you have today.
yeah, I mean,
They
we
really did have
Julie is
to be
still
more versatile.
culturally habituated. My wife still insists on watching it,
Hmm.
even though we generally only last until update, and we don't laugh
Uh
like
huh.
we used to. I remember.
It can be much more hit and miss.
I don't know if it's just because I'm older and more reserved or what, but I don't. I have vivid memories of a Saturday Night Live sketch where I just literally fell out of my chair laughing, and I just don't see moments like that anymore. But I'm an
Yeah.
old guy,
Those,
and if I hear myself go on and on like this, I sound like that guy that always said it prefaces everything by saying "in my day," and
that was how it was, and we liked
yeah.
it.
Trumbull, you read my mind.
But I'm honestly, I think the last time I just fell over laughing at Saturday Night Live was when Chris Farley was auditioning for the stripper job with Patrick Swayze.
Oh yeah, the Chippendales sketch with
Yeah,
yeah, that's a classic. That's one of those few sketches that just seems like an instant classic as soon as it comes on. You just know that that's one that's just that's one that people are going to
yeah.
remember. So okay, and I know, I mean, the reason I asked you to guest on this episode is because I know that you are a fan of the original Starsky and Hutch show that ran from 75 to
I
79,
am.
and you've talked about this before. It's like a comfort food show for you,
It
right?
absolutely is. You have to understand
Mm-hmm.
that when I was growing up, the media landscape was much narrower than it is now. There's no such thing as
Right.
streaming. There was no such thing as home video of any kind. There was hardly cable. There were the
Yeah. You had the three
three
networks, and that was it:
networks, no
ABC,
no
NBC, and
CW, no
CBS.
Fox, just three networks, and maybe one or two syndicated stations, independents, and PBS.
Hmm.
And TV
Right.
was very ephemeral. You saw it or you didn't. If you didn't see it, you had one more shot at a rerun in the summer, and then it just went away.
Yeah.
And producers, for whatever reason, producers would become popular in waves. Like Chuck Lorre is huge now. Um,
Hmm.
Norman Lear was huge in the 70s. Um, Donald
Sure.
Bellisario
All
was
in the
huge in the
Family, and
80s. And when I was growing up, it was all about Spelling Goldberg cop shows. It and that's Starsky and Hutch. It started with
right, and they did like Aaron Spelling also did like the Mod
the
Squad
Mod
and Charlie's
Squad, the
Angels,
Rookies,
and
SWAT, Vegas. Um, it was just a laundry list of these tough guys. And I was
yeah,
in for all of it, starting with the Mod Squad back in '68 and on up through. Oh, geez. Well, I graduated high school in '79, so whatever. I think with Dan Tana was the big one in '79. But
yeah. I remember when
we
Vegas was on.
watched
Yeah,
all of them, and they literally, for my generation, the polyester generation, they defined badass. And Starsky and Hutch were really, I mean, they were huge. They had posters and T-shirts, and it was. I mean, you look back and it seems almost campy, but honest to God, it was the real thing for us. We thought those guys were
right.
were
Yeah,
awesome, and
yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, because yeah, that was the show, and I understand it started as a TV movie. I was watching a behind the scenes featurette the other day, and the creator and producer William Blinn, who has awesome name by the way.
yeah,
He was talking about it started out as a TV movie he wrote about cops who were on the night shift, and the network came back and they were like, well, we can't afford to shoot this all at nights. And I don't think he wanted to revise the script, so he kind of put it away for a few years. But then they revised it a few years later, and it became a TV movie and a backdoor pilot for Starsky and Hutch.
Yeah, that's a thing that they don't really do anymore, but it used to be very common. A TV movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it started because networks were running theatrical movies and getting good numbers on them, and then they would do original movies. People just liked movies. And a lot of these movies
Right.
ended up being backdoor pilots for shows that were not, really sustainable as a series. That's what happened with
like Kolchak the Night Stalker or something like that.
Kolchak was like, it broke every
Right.
record for a TV movie, and everybody thought, oh, well, nothing succeeds like success. Give us more of this. But it's not sustainable as a series.
Yeah, but Starsky and Hutch had a good run. I mean, it ran for 4
Yeah, it
seasons,
did.
which is a pretty healthy run.
It did. It had a lot going for it. But this is the thing that we laugh about now, is how weirdly homoerotic it was, even though at the time everybody poo-pooed the idea. But I've been doing some reading, and apparently at the networks they were very concerned about it. And I suspect that's why it ramped up in later years, because the producers were amusing themselves at ABC's expense. But
Well, and I understand that the two actors on the show, Paul Michael Glaser and David Soul, they would, like, in their blooper reels, like whenever one of them would blow a line, they would just like instantly start kissing each other.
oh yeah, and David
as a
Soul,
joke.
you remember, he was like a teen idol at the time, and he was pushing a record, and he'd do all these interviews, and he'd say things very candidly in a very method actor kind of voice. Well, I think very clearly this is a love story between two men, and you could just
Mhm.
hear some ABC executive having a coronary. And they still do it. Paul Glaser tweeted out something about how every Starsky needs a Hutch, and it's a picture of a man with his hand on his friend's butt. And that
Yeah.
was like a
Oh, that's sweet.
2-minute tempest a month or two ago. But my favorite,
And
my
I was also
all-time
reading
favorite
that.
Starsky and Hutch story is
Okay,
I
go
have
for
a
it.
dear friend. Her name is Anne Hawley, and she is a novelist. And she entered the field through kind of a weird side door. She started writing slash fiction, which is a very weird area of the fan fiction community. It's all about sexual encounters between your favorite TV characters.
Right. And they don't even necessarily have to be romantically
No,
involved in the
no.
show.
I
Like
mean, this is just
a huge thing in slash fic was Kirk and Spock.
exactly.
The
That's
original
where it
Star
gets
Trek.
its name. It started as K/S fiction, and then it just got shortened to slash. Well, Anne was
Yeah.
writing for supernatural slash sites and stuff, and I mean, I try not to make judgments. She's a very fine writer, and she
Uh-huh.
if that's what she wants to do. I write Batman stories, so what the hell do I know? But I casually mentioned this to her about Starsky and Hutch, and she poo-pooed me and said, "There's no way, not in the '70s." And I said, "You watch it. The pilot's on YouTube. I dare you." And so she watched it, and like 10 minutes into it, she's texting me, "Oh my God. Oh my God." And they got away with this. Nobody noticed. And I said, no, everybody noticed.
Yeah.
But
And it's on primetime network TV in the mid 70s. It's
we've
something
always
else.
laughed about it. But when I was a kid, it was all over my head.
Wow.
It was just that they were cool, and they beat up the bad guys, and due process was for sissies.
Yeah. And it also had that great 70s cop show thing. They would do this on Chips too, where they'd like, beat the bad guy of the week, and then they'd all go out to a disco. And, that's fun.
Say, work hard, play hard.
It's
Exactly.
true. Except,
So, and it seemed like they'd also like kind of hop on a lot of the trends that you'd have in the 70s
oh yeah,
too, like, roller disco or pet rocks or whatever it was. It was a show that seemed to be very much of its
it
time.
was absolutely of its time. In fact, I have often thought that the current makeup of the Senate and the way they approach urban issues is severely impacted by the fact that they all grew up during the era of Starsky and Hutch. And they really think that the inner city is the cartoon place where Huggy Bear lives. Because you can just tell from the way
and they're
talk
all the
about
cool rule breakers. Yeah.
Interesting.
I can see that. I think there might be something to that. Yeah.
because they had this weird irrational fear about the place, and it's not any kind of real. I've
Right.
lived in cities my whole life. Most people just they
Mm-hmm.
go to work, they go home, that's it. But Starsky and Hutch worked in this bizarre, surreal cartoon ghetto. It had more in common with a heavy metal comic strip than it did anything in real life.
Yeah. I find it interesting that the show and the movie, they both take place in this fictionalized version of Los Angeles called Bay City.
Yeah,
That's kind of unusual for
it
the
is
thing.
kind of unusual.
Right.
It was one of the last shows to actually do that.
Ah,
Part of it
wow.
was
Yeah, because they do that in the movie too.
the movie. I suppose we should talk about the movie at some point. The movie was this
At some point, yeah.
weird thing where they were really trying to honor the original show, and they got all the details right.
Mm-hmm.
Bay City is there. They managed to get in the bit where they disguise themselves as mimes.
Mm-hmm.
They the Hutch's house is right. Helping kids in the ghetto, lots of little details, and of course the car. But
Yeah. The striped tomato, the red Ford Gran Torino with
yeah,
the big white racing stripe on the
uh-huh.
side, which is just what you want to have when you're an undercover
Well,
cop.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was crazy, that part.
they're the best known undercover cops ever. They walk into a bar and
Yes.
everybody knows who they are. But
Yeah. It's like James Bond being a secret agent who always introduces himself to everybody first thing by his real name.
yeah. But what I was going to say is that the interesting thing to me is that they got all the details right, but the basic spine of the thing, the two guys and the friendship between them, they completely altered that.
Mm-hmm.
The Ben Stiller as Dave Starsky is almost like Mr. Furious in Mystery Man.
Well, I mean, Ben Stiller, he seems to he likes playing characters who are like very tightly wound and have a lot of anger. He likes playing anger a lot, it seems. And Owen Wilson, he's very good at playing like the mellow surfer dude. So
Yeah.
I think they're really just writing to the actors that they had.
I think they must have been.
Right. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, the two of them have great chemistry too, because they've been in a ton of movies together. So I think they've been in a couple. Well, the Royal Tenenbaums, like Permanent Midnight, they were in together. They've been into like a lot of movies together, the two of them. So the chemistry is right in this movie, I think, between them.
Mm-hmm.
It is, although they
Well,
kind of shied away from the love story that David Soul used to talk about. That was kind of what I was showing up for. I wanted to see how far they'd push it.
they could have done a little more with that, but they do hint at it
There's a
at
little
times. I
hint
mean,
there.
should we dive into the movie?
The bit where he's jogging and being all wistful, and
Yeah.
I think there were the kind of pissy bickering thing was just, I don't know, it was weird because it kept pulling me out of the movie. Now, I know that most
Uh huh.
people don't have the show baked into their DNA like I do. We screened it again last night with Julie, my wife, and Julie enjoyed it
Uh huh.
more than I did. She laughed a lot, and the uh, the one thing I really did love about it was Vince Vaughn as the villain. He was like the
Yeah.
distillation of every Spelling Goldberg villain throughout the 70s era of their cop shows. But he was also trying to be a good dad, and that just gave me the giggles.
I enjoyed that contrast a lot. Yeah, I mean it's Vince Vaughn, and he's got like this handlebar mustache thing going on that you only find in like the '70s or old westerns, and that's fun. And I love that in the middle of the movie he just throws his daughter a bat mitzvah. That's
Yeah.
fun.
I mean, I remember like the first time I saw this movie, I thought that was the thing that kind of threw me off the most, like the way Vince Vaughn played the villain character. Because, like, I'm used to seeing, old school Vince Vaughn or swingers Vince
Mhm.
Vaughn, where he's like the fast talking, smart mouth, lovable smart mouth guy. But in this one, he kind of played it pretty straight. Like he's kind of like a real, like straight up villain, and who also is trying to be a good dad and stuff. But he doesn't have too many laughs here. I thought it was like really interesting way to play it. Like it kind of jarred me the first time I saw it. I was like, oh, he's not doing the fast talking, funny guy, lovable thing. That's
Yeah, I mean
interesting.
the movie straight up starts out with him just murdering one of his henchmen on his yacht because one of their planes transporting coke went missing. So he just straight up kills him and throws him off his
Yeah,
yacht.
yeah, motherfuckers got to get got. And also on his yacht we see Juliette Lewis as Kitty, his like his gal on the side.
Yeah, yeah. Juliette Lewis seems to be an actress that the director Todd Phillips enjoys using because she was also an old school. I remember.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, she doesn't have too much to do in this movie, which I guess that's something we'll probably talk about later. Where I don't know. I have noticed in all these Todd Phillips movies, like the women are kind of underwritten for the most part. They don't get like the juicier roles like the dudes get.
Yeah, I guess they are kind of disposable. I wasn't really considering it in his movies overall, but yeah, Todd Phillips has really made a shift with because he did the Joker movie a year or two back, and that's quite a shift from the comedies he started out with, like Old School and Road Trip and
Hangover.
Hangover.
Hangover. Yeah, but like if you watch those movies again, it's kind of the same thing. They're all, like all the women are kind of not are like just kind of just there. There's not much to them, or just they don't have too
Well,
much depth to them.
here's something I
Yeah, it's
wonder
something I
about.
noticed.
You guys work in comedy. Is there still kind of
Hmm.
the prejudice against women being funny? Could that be part of it?
I mean,
Uh,
you run into that sometimes with some people. Yeah, I mean, there are still some people who have that dumb
that
idea, but
yeah, that old school way of thinking. But I think
yeah,
for the most part, I don't think that's a thing. I mean, there have been a ton of movies that have proven that that's not true. Like
Oh, absolutely.
uh,
I'm not
uh
an advocate of
you
the
know,
yeah. I
idea.
mean, like
I
Bridesmaids
just keep
alone.
reading
yeah,
about it.
Bridesmaid. Uh, yeah, I mean, for the most part, I think that's just like an old way of thinking. But I think movies like like you said, Bridesmaids, Girls Trip,
Hmm.
even the last. I even like the last Kristen Wiig Annie Mumolo movie, the Barb and Star movie. So like, there are a ton of instances showing that the whole thing about women not being funny, that's just a bunch of hooey, as the kids say.
Well, I mean, SNL alone. I mean,
Well, I
probably my two
kind
favorite
of
people on the show
I
right
keep
now.
thinking we're done with it after Tina Fey ran Saturday Night Live for years, but
Yeah,
but and it was good. I mean, but
yeah.
it's every so often it crops up, and I'm always surprised. The other thought I have is that,
I mean, there's never a shortage of idiots out there, you know?
yeah,
Hello, Twitter.
the other thought I had though is that there's nothing in the original to build on. There are no women in the original. They're they're
Right.
Mm.
Yeah. I
the
mean,
cheerleaders.
you've just got Starsky, you've got Hutch, you've got Huggy Bear, and you got Captain Dobie, and that's
That's
it.
it. The women in the original exist to be menaced and murdered, and that's it. The cheerleaders in the movie got more depth and more screen time than any female in an original episode of Starsky and Hutch.
Oh,
Wow.
that's sad.
Wow, I did not know that.
Oh yeah,
there are two cheerleaders in this movie that are played by Carmen Electra and Amy Smart, and Starsky and Hutch encounter them over the course of the investigation, and they're romancing them in the movie, and that leads to like one of my favorite sequences in the movie. I mean, the Starsky and Hutch, they uncover this packet of cocaine, and they think, oh, we got the goods on the bad guy, on Vince Vaughn. And when they bring it back to the station house and they have it tested, it doesn't come up as cocaine. And we find out that Vince Vaughn's character Reese has developed this new synthetic cocaine that doesn't come up as cocaine in any sort of test. So
Right.
they can smuggle it with impunity, and the cops just think it's artificial sweetener. So Ben Stiller's David Starsky, he puts a lot of it in his coffee for the evening, and he ends up unknowingly getting high as a kite.
Yeah, that's a crazy scene too, and
Yeah.
well, that leads to the disco scene. I mean, that leads to a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, well, should we talk about it like from the beginning, or just kind of hop around from scene to scene?
Well, I mean, yeah, we can get into it from the beginning. As I said, it starts out with Vince Vaughn just straight up murdering one of his henchmen on his yacht, and we meet our two leads, David Starsky, Ben Stiller, who's like the uptight by the book cop, and we see him like chasing down a perp like across a rooftop, and then he like goes down a fire escape, and I got to say he really nailed Paul Michael Glazer's really frantic, loose style of running. I thought that you see on the show.
yeah, and there were even some like shot for shot tribute moments in that chase that I recognized from like the original credits for the show.
Yeah, I watched the pilot, and it's very reminiscent of like the big climax of the pilot, because in the pilot, like Starsky's like running up the stairs to catch the bad guys who are going up on an elevator, and Hutch is outside going up the fire escape. So it was very reminiscent of that, I thought.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, there were like a bunch of shots in this movie that looked like pretty much straight out of a '70s action TV show, like that quick zoom in that they do for the exterior shot. And there was like a lot of things like, oh yeah, that looks like as that '70s action TV show feel. That I dug it.
Yeah. And in contrast to this, we meet Owen Wilson's Hutch, Ken Hutchinson, and he's accompanying some bad guys in the course of robbing a bookie.
Right.
And he just goes along with this crime until the cops bust them, and then he like pulls out his badge and he's like, "Hey, I'm a cop."
I was working on a case. Wow.
Yeah, and we find out when they're both getting bowled out by Captain Dobie, played by 70s icon Fred Williamson.
That just made me happy to
Starsky,
see him in this.
It's fun,
He's
right?
perfect.
Yeah, he's Fred the Hammer Williamson.
Well, I have a bunch of original
fun.
Fred Williamson cinema here at the house.
Oh yeah.
Oh, what do you got, like Black Caesar and stuff?
We have a whole blaxploitation section on the shelf, and
nice.
It's a good time.
All right. I can dig it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I always will fondly remember Fred Williamson because he starred in the original movie version of MASH back in 1970. I'm not going to say his character name because
as you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Well, you can't even say the name of my favorite movie of his, which is a hell of a thing.
Oh God!
Is there an N-bomb involved?
Yeah, there's an N-word involved, and it's been reissued under the title Boss, but that was
Oh,
not the
okay.
original title.
Yeah.
And
We'll just call it
yeah.
Boss for now.
Yeah, yeah.
the hell of it is, it's a really
Um,
good movie, but you could never get away with it today.
Yeah, it really is amazing some of the things they got away with in the 70s, like both in the movies and on TV. Um, the So we find out when Captain Dobie's bawling him out that Starsky, he was chasing all that whole extensive chase we saw. He was chasing down a purse snatcher who got $7, and Starsky's like wound very tight. His mother was like this big legendary cop on the force who was on the force for 22 years, and Starsky has trouble keeping a partner. He's had 12 partners for the last 4 years, and Hutch, meanwhile, he's like so deep undercover, he doesn't file any reports or arrest anyone or just anything. Like, he's basically just become a criminal on the police payroll.
Yeah, pretty much. I respect that.
So they have very differing approaches to the job, and of course, Captain Dobie decides to make them partners, and wackiness ensues.
Sure. It's like y'all two deserve each other.
Yeah.
Y'all got the partners.
And then we see Vince Vaughn having a big meeting with all his various henchmen, and his main henchman is played by Jason Bateman. It's always fun to see Jason Bateman. And he's got like a bit of a 70s look too, because he's got like the slightly tinted sunglasses and like a half mustache thing going on. So I enjoyed that.
Yeah, and again, he kind of plays it pretty straight too, which just kind of surprised me too. He's just not a lot of laughs out of him either. He's like the straight man, which he does really really well.
Yeah. I mean, he's a good actor, whether he's doing comedic stuff or straight stuff. And as I said, they've developed this new kind of cocaine that makes it. I think it's supposed to be more addictive. I think they said something like that. But the main thing is it's undetectable by drug tests or by police dogs. They bring in a police dog to sniff out the cocaine, and he finds the regular cocaine that one person's carrying, but he doesn't find the fake cocaine. So, or the new Coke, as they call it.
That's right. Oh, well, that's supposed to be like a nod to like Coca-Cola, New Coke.
I'm thinking so. Yeah.
I'm assuming that was
Didn't
the
even
joke
catch that
they were
too.
after when they said it.
Yeah.
I mean, Julie and I both kind of.
I totally didn't catch that until now.
Yeah. And we also have. I think this is brilliant casting. We have Snoop Dogg as Huggy Bear, who is the police informant, who's like on the show. Like, he's sort of a pimp, but I think they never say he's a pimp. Is that right, Greg?
Well, on the show, he eventually became a bar owner, but Huggy's thing was always that he was a failed entrepreneur. He was like the Ron Popeye of the ghetto. He was always trying to market something cool and new. The best example of it was they did an episode where John Saxon thought he was a vampire. Straight up, honest to God, Dracula vampire. And so Huggy, as this vampire killer is terrorizing the ghetto, Huggy decides to market anti-vampire kits with steaks and garlic and holy water for $9.95.
Makes sense.
Sure.
All right. Yeah, you got a need for it.
He's just always got an eye for the marketing. The market.
I love that. Yeah, and, it's a 70s TV show, so of course you have to have John Saxon guest starring at some point.
Of course.
I mean, it's not a TV show from the 70s or
that
early 80s.
That is actually the episode of Starsky and
starring.
Hutch that I always tell people about when I say the show is completely insane, and they say, "Oh, it couldn't have been that bad. It ran for 4 years," and I say, "No, Starsky and Hutch was fucked up. It was lit. Listen." John Saxon was a straight up vampire on it. And they don't believe it.
What? Like undercover cops, they come up against vampires all the time. I mean, that's a standard thing.
Not only that, but like vampire dancers. He was a dance instructor. He thought he was a vampire. And I'm not even a little bit kidding. You can go on YouTube and Google John Saxon, Starsky and Hutch, a vampire, and see him dancing his way around the ghetto in his cape.
Wow.
Nice.
Nosferatu Boogaloo.
Yes.
I like it.
So
I'm sorry,
the thing of it is, it's on the one hand, the movie seems kind of deranged, but on the other hand, I don't know that it would have even risen to the level of a midway episode of Starsky and Hutch.
Okay.
It could have gotten weirder.
It could have gotten way weirder, and the movie actually
did the
is
TV
almost
Huggy Bear
played
have an
straight.
iguana?
Mm.
Yeah. Greg, did the TV Huggy Bear have an iguana, or was that an invention of the movie?
That was in the movie.
Okay. Because we have an iguana, and when Starsky meets Huggy Bear as because he's a pre-existing informant for Hutch, he's like, Starsky's so anal and by the book, he's saying like, "Hey, do you guys have permits for those weapons?" And they end up drawing on each other, and they end up shooting the tail off of Huggy's iguana.
Right.
Which,
I'm sure at the end if they had to say, no iguanas were harmed in the making of this film. And it's just
well, like in the behind the scenes footage, you can see that the real iguana, they just covered up his real tail with like the blue screen fabric. So they just took it out with computers.
right.
And then Snoop Dogg's holding like a fake iguana tail in the other hand.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed that scene because like they go off on these weird digressions, like, hey, why is that iguana running around loose? Shouldn't you get him a terrarium? And then they start talking about what a terrarium is.
The erudite
I
henchmen
enjoyed that.
were
I thought that was
awesome.
fun. They were really good. Yeah, I could have done with a little more of them.
They were good. Here's my thoughts on Snoop Dogg as Huggy Bear. Like I did enjoy him. I liked him, but I don't know. Part of me thought Snoop Dogg was like maybe a little too cool to play Huggy Bear.
Way too cool to play Huggy Bear. Huggy Bear is a bumbler.
Right.
He's
that's what I thought.
He's
like
always tripping over himself. He's not the king of the ghetto. The joke with Huggy Bear is that he's an incompetent who thinks he's king of the ghetto.
Yeah, because like I looked it up, and according to IMDb, two other people that were considered to play Huggy Bear, Chris Rock and Don Cheadle, and I think both of those might have been a better fit because it's like Greg said, because like on the TV show, Huggy Bear is supposed to be sort of like a low level, sort of buffoonish guy, but in this movie, he's like the Godfather of the hood. He runs.
Yeah,
shit.
that was weird. See, that was the thing I kept running into with this movie is that, wait, but they're not like that, and it's,
Right.
I'm truly not a purist. You really can't be a purist with a straight face when you're talking about spelling cop shows because they're freakishly inconsistent, weird, and they don't take place on the planet Earth that we're familiar with. But but they did establish baselines for the characters, and like Starsky being a by the book tight ass, and Hutch being an almost criminal, and Huggy Bear being the Godfather were just all very jarring needle scratch moments for me.
I mean, I think it's one of those things that like they just put Snoop Dogg in because Snoop Dogg was in Old School, so maybe he already had a relationship with Todd Phillips. And I also noticed that in this one scene, there's one scene coming up where Snoop Dogg drives up in like a 76 Lincoln that they talk about, and according to IMDb, Todd Phillips was having trouble finding that type of Lincoln in that color. Like he was having a hard time trying to find it, and he told Snoop about it. And Snoop Dogg was like, "Oh, I have a Lincoln, 1976. You want to just use my Lincoln?" And they use it. So the car you see in this movie, that's Snoop's actual car.
I think that's kind of cool.
Kind of cool.
No, it is.
Yeah.
The thing that I wonder about is all the Gran Torinos they had to have gone through.
Oh, they had to wreck a few Gran Torinos because, they take a beating. And even in like the closing credits of the movie, we see a few of them getting wrecked and beat up.
Actually, I have that info right here.
Oh, awesome.
About 10 1975 to 1976 Ford Gran Torinos were totaled during production. Only 2 Torinos from the film were intact. One of them is a 1976 Gran Torino with the Starsky and Hutch paint job, and the other was a base 1974 Torino, which had been in storage. Uh, yeah, and in reality, the 1976 and 1974 Torino, which were used in the film, were repainted with the white stripe resembling the one used on the television show. All, all, all of the movie Torinos use 15-inch slot mag rims. They're not available new, so the rims, originally known as the Anson Sprint, first introduced in 1963 and subsequently copied by several aftermarket wheel manufacturers, ET Wheels, Appliance, Krager, Fenton, American Racing, US Wheel, until the early 80s, mostly came from swap meets, salvage yards, or eBay.
Okay.
So yeah, they wrecked 10 cars.
Yeah. Okay. And I know the car on the show, that was like one of the trademarks of the show, and they ended up, like, car dealers were getting a lot of demand for that specific model after it became popular on the show.
Yeah, it was a thing. You could get toys and models too.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I had a little of that. Like like the show I was a huge fan of when I was a kid was the A-Team, and the A-Team van, that was the shit. And that also had a big racing stripe, which you want on the vehicle when you're a national fugitive.
Yeah,
so,
you gotta lay low.
When you're on the run from the government, you want to drive a big black van with a big racing stripe on the side.
Big nice spoiler. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you're gonna be on the run, you gotta look cool.
Exactly. So they meet up with Huggy Bear. Huggy Bear is like their informant. Hutch is also friends with a neighborhood kid by the name of Willis, who has a magnificent afro, by the way.
Oh my god, his hair was perfect.
There really ought to be some sort of Oscar for the costume and makeup and set dressing people on this movie, because it was all dead on.
It really did look like the 70s, and they even got to the point of duplicating specific outfits from the show. Like Ben Stiller's wearing this big,
that's what I was going to say, is it's
sweater.
not duplicating the 70s. It literally looks like an episode of Starsky and Hutch. Just right down the line.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I watched the original pilot of the TV show, and Paul Michael Glaser is wearing that exact same big button-down sweater.
Yeah, that Lebowski sweater.
Yeah, and he's also in it in like several of the publicity photos from the show. So it became very associated with the show, I believe.
Those sweaters were a big deal, too.
I love that they went to that extent to just duplicate the costumes. And you got Owen Wilson in the same sort of Letterman jacket that Hutch wears on the show.
Costumes are pretty dead on.
Fun fact for you, they sold them at record stores and head shops back in the day. I had one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, you can just pretend that you're David Starsky for one shining moment.
Pretty much.
And it probably had some nice pockets to stash your weed in, I'd imagine.
I know. If I had to run up a flight of stairs, I'd fall over dead, even in high school. But I could have the sweater.
Yeah.
Sure. Occasionally slide over the hood of a car or something. And
oh, nice.
Oh, God. I'd be the guy that flew on the hood of the car and went thud and then went, oh, God, my back is out.
I read, actually researching this episode, that David Soul actually got back problems later in life because of a stunt he did in the pilot where he dives on the top of a car. So,
gosh,
don't try this stuff at home.
No.
Nope. That's why I don't do it. That's why I don't do anything.
Yeah, this podcast is as physical as I get.
Right.
So the plot proper really starts when Starsky and Hutch, they get a call about a dead body that's washed up on shore, and it's the guy that we saw Vince Vaughn kill at the opening scene of the movie. And Hutch is such a bad cop. He's like, oh, well, let's just push the body back out to sea and maybe he'll float down to the next precinct. Because, he's a floater, so he's going to be really tough to solve, because he's got, probably doesn't have any ID. The body's all bloated. There are no fingerprints. So, and we see Hutch actually steal money from the corpse's wallet too. So,
Yeah.
yeah, not a good cop.
I mean, he's not going to need the money anymore. I mean, come on,
Right.
put it to good use. Yeah. Then we see the two of them trying to figure out the Don Joe.
Hmm.
They're in a diner, and of course they get ragged on by like in every cop movie, there's the rival duo cops that gives the guy some guff. And in this one, we have Minetti, played by Chris Penn, and his
Hmm.
partner is Matt Walsh, who I don't think gets a name in this movie. Matt Walsh doesn't seem to have any lines in this film.
Yeah, it's very small parts for actors of their stature.
Yeah,
I just wonder if I had more to do that was like edited out of the final cut or something.
maybe, yeah, but like they play the standard of cop duo that's like, hey, look who's here! It's Starsky and Butts.
Yeah,
you know, you know the type,
yeah. But always nice to see Chris Penn and Matt Walsh.
right?
Um,
Yeah,
so they find an ID on the corpse's wallet that they track back to Reese Feldman because he was associated with a corporation called the Nearly There Program, uh, which is like sort of a halfway house sort of thing to help give ex-cons a leg up because nobody wants to hire ex-cons, and Reese Feldman's just such a good guy.
yeah.
He's
So
just
right.
helping out these ex-cons and not having them run cocaine for him at all.
No, that's why would you even get such an idea? Yeah. So we see you see the two of them talk to Vince Vaughn. Um, Justin Bateman's there. Plays Kevin and
Jason Bateman.
Justin Bateman. Who else? Jason
I think you're
Bateman.
getting that from Justine Bateman.
I probably am.
Yeah.
Jason Bateman playing Kevin, who I guess is like his right hand man. He doesn't have. I don't think they ever say his official title. But another person who auditioned for that role, Bradley Cooper.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, I could have
Yeah.
seen. I could have seen him do it. I could have seen him do it.
And this was before The Hangover, right?
Yeah, because I think Hangover came out in '08, so this
Okay.
was years before that. And we see Reese with his wife, played by Molly Sims, I believe.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And we find out that the corpse, I think the corpse's name was like Terrence something. I think
Yes, Terrence. I wrote it down. Well,
I have it later on. Terrence Myers,
there it
and
is.
he was dating a Bay City kitty cheerleader. So of course they go out to the local Bay City stadium and they start questioning cheerleaders.
Yeah,
And that's where they meet Carmen Electra and Amy
That
Smart
is actually
playing,
a much more Sherlockian leap of logic than they would ever take on the original show.
yeah.
That is totally a Starsky and Hutch idea, is that all cheerleaders know each other.
That's true. Well, I guess the logic is they only have the one local football team, so any cheerleaders in the area would be on the same squad. I guess I don't know.
yeah, they're all in the same union.
Yeah. Um. So we all have a scene where we see Starsky and Hutch. They're questioning the cheerleader who was the girlfriend of the dead guy after some flirtation with Carmen Electra and Amy Smart, and they're questioning this cheerleader who just decides like, well, hey, I've got to pick up my kid for school soon. I'm just going to change right in front of you. That's cool, right? And they're very flustered, and I thought that was a funny scene.
Yeah, boobs, boobies.
But I like that they have the restraint that they don't just have her be gratuitously topless. We just see her back, and they're just playing the awkwardness of her being topless in front of them without actually showing her topless.
Right. You see some side on the side, but that's about it.
Yeah, because it's a PG-13 movie, so I guess
Yeah.
we can't have gratuitous boobs like we would in the 70s or 80s.
Ah, shucks.
Um,
Yeah, I think this was Typhoon's first PG-13 movie, if I'm not mistaken.
I did read that. Yeah. And she doesn't have much for Starsky and Hutch to go on, but she gives them a jean jacket from her old boyfriend that has a very distinctive dragon embroidered on it. So that's their
Right.
next lead.
The plot thickens.
Yeah.
So from there, we see that Hutch goes picks up Willis from school.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I think that they mentioned like, yeah, this is something I do because Willis doesn't really have his folks can't bother to pick him up, so I do it. I help out.
His
And
mom works late on Wednesdays, so he
right,
picks up
right,
Willis on Wednesdays.
right. I shouldn't say his mom. I shouldn't say his parents don't care. That was rude. But yeah, so then all three of them go and visit Huggy to get some info. They compliment Huggy on the Lincoln I mentioned earlier, the '76 Lincoln. He says, "Yeah, this doesn't come out till next year, but I know some people who know some people who rob some people."
Yeah,
I thought it was a good line. I like that.
that is a good line. Yeah.
Right.
And they find out from Huggy that the dragon on the jean jacket, that's the work of a guy named Big Earl, who hangs out at a particular biker bar. So they have to go to the biker bar to find Big Earl. So they decide to go undercover in the biker bar.
Right. And also Huggy tells them about a big coke deal going down. And I also like, I don't know why this line made me laugh, but when Huggy says, we talked about the thing about the biker bar, I think either Starsky or Hutch says, what kind of bar, what do they do down there? And he says, I don't know, they listen to Jim Croce, play darts, whatever did you white people do. Do you white people do that? Is it all Jim Croce and darts?
That's pretty much all it is, yeah.
I thought so.
Every once in a while, we
nonstop
change it up
Jim
with a
Croce
little
and darts.
Johnny Mathis.
Ooh.
Sure.
But,
Get crazy, put on some Gordon Lightfoot.
yeah.
Yeah. And we have another scene in the police station of them sort of getting ready for their undercover scene. And I enjoyed this. We have Starsky and Hutch with just their shoulder holsters and wearing these absurdly short towels, which was another thing that they just got straight from the TV show.
Where the towels were really that short?
Oh, yeah.
They weren't quite that short. They exaggerate, but they are wearing like extraordinarily short towels.
That was one of the moments that my friend
they were
Ann
on the
texted
TV
me
show.
about.
They were above the knees. Yeah.
Mm. Oh, yeah, that's. Yeah, I did like that joke. How like I think that the cops had told me you're wearing hand towels. The real towels are up there.
Right.
It's
right.
like a mini skirt basically.
And they look more or less like mini skirts on the show. I remember the towels are like a few inches above the knees. So, giving the viewers a little beefcake in the 70s.
Meow.
So they go out to the biker bar, and I enjoy their disguises are just them looking exactly like Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper in Easy Rider.
Yes.
And it's never commented on. It's just there for you to pick up on if you notice it.
Right. They even play that song from the band that was in Easy Rider too, right?
They might have. I don't think I recognized the song, but
pretty sure it was that. But yeah, it's definitely a huge Easy Rider nod.
Yeah. And I mean, Owen Wilson doesn't look too unlike Peter Fonda in that movie with the leather jacket and everything. So I enjoyed that.
Yeah. It's a spitting image.
Yeah, and also like by this point we see Starsky and Hutch like starting to bond a little bit in the investigation. They have to fight off some toughs, and we see a little mutual admiration breaking out with I like your style, I like your moves. So,
John, I think we just found a new way to end this podcast every episode.
I like your style, I like your moves.
Nice. But yeah, we find out from the bar that they're looking for Big Earl. Big Earl's not there. The guy behind it, the guy who they thought was Big Earl was just some guy named Jeff who's running the bar while Big Earl's in the clink in the Who's gal because he got pinched 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, he got busted, and Jeff's just watching the place, and they're like, "Well, you really shouldn't pass yourself off as the owner if you're just watching the place." I mean,
yeah. Like I watch my sister's house. I don't say this is my house.
Right. And I enjoyed their tendency to just get sidetracked on minutia like that. I think that's a funny thing in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, they follow this lead. They go off to the Bay City Correctional Facility, and we get a little surprise cameo when they meet up with Big Earl in the big house. And it's a Mr. Will Ferrell.
Mr. William Ferrell, that's right. He comes in, denim shirt with the dragon, stitching emblazed on it, wearing a fishnet cap, which
Mhm.
I thought was a nice little touch. And he'll give them like basically Starsky and Hutch ask him for information. He says, "Well, I'll give you information, but what are you going to give me in return?"
Oh,
Yeah.
and they're thinking like, oh, okay, well, we can get you like a radio for your cell or a TV, make the time pass more quickly. And he's like, no, no, I want something else. And we
Ooh.
find out Big Earl, he's a bit of a perv.
You don't say.
Yeah,
Yeah, because he likes Hutch's the way his looks, so he wants to see Hutch's belly button, and
right.
so Hutch begrudgingly shows him his belly button, and he's like, "Oh, that's nice. That's like a little bowl of oatmeal," which I don't even. Okay.
Best not contemplated too much.
Yeah. Side note: Will Ferrell shot all his scenes in one day.
Yeah. So, and then they want a little more information. We find out from Big Earl that he did work for like a cocaine dealer, but he doesn't really have any information. Doesn't have a name or anything. He didn't get paid in cash. He just got paid in cocaine, and he's somehow able to give them a sample. He somehow has a sample of this in the joint. I guess the cops didn't pick up on it because it's undetectable.
Yeah. All right. You know that? Yeah, that does make sense because I did wonder how they were able to get the coke out without it not being a big deal. But yeah, that what you said makes sense. Okay,
I guess. I mean, this is just my supposition after the fact.
got it.
But so yeah, and then we see them leaving the prison, and they're just very quiet. They've obviously had to do something even more humiliating, and they're just like, hey, let's never talk to the of this again. And Owen Wilson is like, yeah, that's a good idea. And then we instantly cut to Captain Dobie's office, and we see video of the two of them, and they're like, one's riding on the other's back, and they're both pretending to be dragons.
Yeah, apparently Big Girl has a dragon fetish.
Sure.
So they were acting out like two sexy dragons do. Like we're not here to king shame, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean that is different. I'll say that.
I'm guessing there weren't a whole lot of dragon fetishes on the TV show, right?
No, actually, that was something that I actually really laughed hard at that because they came at it sideways. It's just alluding to a little bit here and there, like when Owen Wilson says, if you ever actually, do you think they could actually, and Starsky's like, shut up, I can't hear you.
Yeah.
But no, the original show, mental illness always manifested itself as homicide. Anybody who was a pervert was also a killer, like Saxon's vampire.
Sure.
That was.
Oh wow.
There were an alarming number of mentally ill slashers in the 70s Bay City, according to Starsky and Hutch.
I mean, that was, I think, just most of crime in the 70s. I mean, I'm now thinking that it might have been a better movie if Vince Vaughn had been revealed to be a vampire halfway through. That would have been a nice twist.
I would have been so on board with some big screen version of John Saxon Vampire Killer.
That would be cool. That would be very
Especially,
cool.
but you got to have the dancing.
Always do a reboot.
Dancing. Got to have the ballet dance instructor.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, speaking of dancing,
yeah. So Starsky and Hutch, they take this sample of the cocaine back to the police offices, and they're humiliated because everybody in the precinct has seen their shirtless dragon play. And Captain Dobie is like, hey, this isn't coke. This is just a bag of artificial sweetener. And he goes, you're off the case. And I don't think they have to turn in their badges or anything, but they're off the case. So that's bad. And they decide that their only real lead now is the two cheerleaders. So they decide to take the cheerleaders out because it's the 70s. You gotta go date some cheerleaders.
Damn straight. Then there's like a scene where Big Earl calls Reese, tells him what went down. He's like, I didn't tell them your name, but they know something's up, which gets Reese and gets his dander up. And
Hmm.
then we cut back to like what you mentioned before. The guys are dating, took the girls back to Hutch's place. They're all they're canoodling and laughing and
Hmm.
and jiving and all that jazz. Um, Starsky wants to make some coffee, and he asks Hutch, "Hey, do you have any sugar here?" And he's like, "No, I think I'm out." So Starsky sees the artificial sweetener, which is actually cocaine. He's like, "Oh, I'll just use this since it's artificial sweetener," and
Yeah.
he gets high as a kite. And also,
Yeah.
um, which leads into like one of the funniest scenes in this movie, where
Hmm.
Hutch tells Starsky, "Hey, like I'm gonna spend some time out there with the girls. Bring out my guitar and like just give it to me, and I'll play something that'll
Right.
seal the deal,"
Right.
as the kids say.
Yeah. And Starsky obliges, so Hutch starts playing on his guitar, and Owen Wilson sings the song "Don't Give Up on Us, Baby," which was an actual single that the real David Soul released in like 1977 because he had a side career as a musician.
Yeah, I thought that
It
was a
was
nice
a
little touch that they
monster
did that.
hit too. I thought that was a really deep cut.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, I don't know if that song is real remembered today. It was a hit back in the day, but I don't think you even really hear it on oldie stations
You
or
really
anything
don't.
anymore. But maybe I'm just not. Yeah, maybe I'm just not listening to the right stations. But we see Starsky hallucinating the song, and we actually have an animated bird who comes in and like lands on Owen Wilson's shoulder, which is a neat surreal touch they just tossed in there.
Yeah, right, and yeah, and just we just see like Starsky just kind of staring at him
Hmm.
lovingly as he sings this very sweet song,
Yeah,
and like getting all teary eyed over it. He's moved. He's very
he's
moved.
getting very emotional. Yeah. So Starsky's got all this extra energy because he's all coked up, and he's like, "Let's go out, yeah, let's go out, yeah, yeah, yeah." And the girls are like, "Okay, well, I guess we could go to a club." And so it's the '70s, so of course we go to a disco,
We
and
go to
uh,
disco.
you, me, go disco.
It's
And
good.
so yeah, and when they're there, Starsky he jostles up against this guy, and they get into like kind of a pissing match, and they decide to settle it in a dance off. It's Starsky versus Dancing Rick, and then we have another cool cameo in this movie is Patton Oswalt as the disco club DJ.
That's right. He's wearing like a big old curly afro and like a satin like jacket.
Yeah, Patton looks magnificent in this movie. I must say, he's got this great like almost a Jufro thing going, and he
You
like
know,
is doing the play by play on the dance
I
off.
loved Patton so much, and I wanted a movie about the DJ.
Yeah, absolutely. The DJ I think is one of my favorite characters in the movie, if for no other reason that he just displays knowledge of the future. At
He
one point,
he calls
the
it
guy
like a
that Starsky is
sportscaster. That was hilarious.
yeah, and he's like, from the far off future of 1984, it's a funky disco robot. And I love that the DJ, with no explanation, knows about events that are like nearly a decade in the future. And he knows what the popular dance trends are going to be.
He sees all, he knows all. He is the DJ.
It's honestly one of my favorite moments in the movie because it's just he knows what the popular dances are going to be from 1984, and there's no explanation offered at all.
Nope. And also, I got to give a nod to Starsky's outfit in this scene. It's like an
Mhm.
all denim jumpsuit with like rhinestones on it.
Yeah,
So I'm guessing he just had that in his closet. This whole like he that's his stepping out clothes. I was like, that
and they
is.
leave from Hutch's place, so maybe it's some of Hutch's clothes. I don't know.
I don't know. Either way, it is magnificent.
Yeah, I think the girls have changes of clothes too. I don't understand why everybody has a change of outfits when they're all just leaving from Hutch's place. But whatever. It's a Starsky and Hutch
Yeah,
movie.
you don't bring a change of outfits when you go out on dates.
Well, I do, but I mean, I'm a clothes horse, so.
Oh, that is true.
Sadly, Starsky loses the dance competition because the fix is in. Like the DJ is friends with Dancing Rick, so and Starsky kind of freaks out, and he ends up pulling his gun, and that's when Hutch tackles him, and he realizes like, oh hey, this isn't just fun and games. Something's seriously wrong here.
Yeah, he pulls out a gun on an unarmed man and brandishes it around the club because he lost the dance contest. That's
well, as you do,
yeah,
you do.
I understand.
He had that in the bag.
Yeah, those were my best moves. What the fuck? Everybody's getting arrested tonight.
So the gang, they all go back to Hutch's place. I mean, Hutch manages to calm everything down, and he puts Starsky to bed, and he's like, I think you're high on cocaine. And he just kind of quickly corrects himself. He's like, I mean, from what I know of the effects of cocaine, and he goes back to the girls and ends up having a three-way with them.
Hey, all right. As you do.
Yeah, well, yeah, because it's like the mid-70s, and that's what you do.
Everything's coming up, Hutch.
Right. And we cut to the next morning. Hutch is making breakfast for Starsky, and gives him his patented hangover cure, and he confirms that I guess he had it more thoroughly tested, or I guess he just sampled the artificial sweetener, and he's like, yeah, that's cocaine, all right.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I tested it. Holly tested it. Stacy tested it.
It's like, it's sure as Coke.
So they had a fun cocaine three-way party. So.
Oh, the 70s, my lord. Magical time.
No consequences for our actions yet. So
nope, not at all. What's AIDS?
So yeah, the next morning, as they're leaving Hutch's place to go into work, they get shot at by a bad guy. Starsky gets all rattled because they're blowing out the tires on his beloved Gran Torino. And the bad guy gets away, but they trace his plate, and they go to bust the guy, and his young son is throwing knives at them.
Right, like it was a guy who lives in Koreatown. They bust in through the door. They get the guy, but like you said, the son hops behind the kitchen counter and throws knives at them,
Right.
just willy-nilly. He gets I believe he gets Starsky in the back a couple times, and and Hutch gets hit. And I also read that they were Todd Phillips originally wanted the kid to throw ninja stars.
Throwing stars, yeah. But that would have been an automatic mature rating in the UK, because I guess ninja stars are banned there. So
is that what that? Yeah, because I read that. I was like, that makes no sense.
Yeah,
are ninja stars are under 18 kids shouldn't be seeing ninja stars in the UK?
Apparently any scene featuring ninja stars automatically gets an 18 rating in the UK. So
wow.
So just to save their rating, and
authority figures have
give them the widest possible audience
about ninja stars. When I was in shop class in junior high, first day, they made a big deal about never make ninja stars. Yes, they really work. No, you can't make them. And the instructor just really got on his high horse about this. So at some point, somewhere, a 12-year-old kid threw a ninja star and somebody died, clearly.
Wow. Oh, jeez. I could see that. Yeah. Because I remember ninja stars being one of the coolest things in junior high or something like that. I don't know. It was one of those things boys were super obsessed with. It's oh, ninja stars, they're rad. You know how kids are obsessed with nunchucks at one point or whatever.
Or butterfly knives.
Butterfly knives, yeah. Oh, I've seen my share of those.
Yeah. Yeah, those are all the coolest thing when you're 14.
Yeah, you keep a knife in your boot, like you're Crocodile Dundee or something. Everybody thinks you're super rad.
Yeah. So they finally manage to arrest the perp, and they bring him downtown to interrogate him. And Starsky decides to intimidate him by pretending to play Russian roulette. He empties his gun and pretends to load a bullet back in, but the bullet accidentally ends up in the chamber, unbeknownst to Starsky. And so he thinks he has an empty gun, but the perp realizes that there actually is a bullet in the chamber. So he's he's getting really scared.
Yeah, that's one of the things that kind of threw me off because like we've established that Starsky is just like by the book, kind of straight laced dude, and so he interrogates somebody by using Russian roulette
Mm-hmm.
and threatening to blow him or the other guy's brains out. It's a
Yeah.
it's a little extreme, but I mean gotta get that coke somehow.
It is. I mean, yeah, maybe he's still coked up. Maybe it's just Ben Stiller was like, I want to play another angry scene. But or it was the 70s and Russian roulette was still by the book.
Was that standard
I don't
regulation
know.
in the any cops from the 70s that listen, please let us know. Was like, oh yeah, we taken a perp, play some Russian roulette, and we got our man.
It was still the age of Dirty Harry. I'm sure that sort of thing was perfectly okay.
Wow, wow. I'm kind of sorry I missed all that.
So they eventually settle that down, and we find out that Hutch, like, he speaks Korean, so he talks to Chow, the suspect, and they form a friendship, and he finds out that the Chow, the guy he met who hired him to kill Starsky and or Hutch, he met them on a yacht, and that sort of triggers a memory because they find out when they were talking to Reese Feldman before that he has a yacht. There's a nice picture of his yacht in his living room. So they're like, hey, two people with yachts? That's impossible. So obviously it's the same guy.
There's only one man in Bay City that has a yacht.
Right.
Yeah, so they make their way down to Reese's place, and while this, and at Reese's home, his daughter's bat mitzvah is happening, and we see another appearance by the Dan Band, who was also they were also in Old School, and the lead singer singing "Feel Like Making Love to You" at a bat mitzvah, which is highly inappropriate.
Yeah. The Dan Man is another one of Todd Phillips's trademarks, or at least it was for his comedies. They appear in Old School. I believe they appear at the end of The Hangover as well, and they're always singing like a cover song, and it gets inappropriately sexual.
Yes, absolutely.
And it does again here, where the lead singer finishes off the song. He's saying like, "Rock into womanhood, Elizabeth. I know that you will."
And Reese is like, "What's that mean? What the fuck does that mean?
Yeah,
what's that about?"
But I also enjoyed seeing like Vince Vaughn just kind of groove into the song. He's pulling out some of his disco moves.
It's a great song. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we see that there was somebody had brought a gift to this bat mitzvah. It's a huge human-sized gift, and they open it. They don't know who it's from, and we see Starsky and Hutch dressed as mimes, and you're
undercover as mimes because they're masters of disguise.
Right now, Greg, you're telling me like this was like part of from the TV show, them dressed as mimes.
Interestingly, it wasn't something they went undercover doing. Starsky and Hutch would often go undercover in the most insane disguises, and they often included ridiculous hats. But
sure.
But the mime thing, apparently, most cops when they go off duty, they go to the bar and they drink. When Starsky and Hutch are off duty, they hang out at the house with Huggy, and they put on weird little vaudeville skits for their dates. And that's what this was. They got dressed up as mimes in those exact outfits. And it was like the tag of an episode, just the fun human moment after the bad guys have all gone away, hanging out at Hutch's place, putting on a mime skit for Huggy and the girls.
So they did this when they were off the clock.
Yeah, off the clock.
Like for
just because that's what you do.
That seems like a lot of work.
I know.
You've got to get that makeup just right.
Yeah.
That's not something I would want to do on a date. Because like if the date goes well and things start getting romantic, then you got to stop and take off all the mime makeup.
Yeah. It was just
it just
crazy.
Seems like a lot of work.
The funny thing was, I was looking on YouTube, and there, David Soul and Paul Glaser and Antonio Fargas apparently have been doing a lot of cons a lot of convention panels and
Yes,
stuff.
they were actually at the East Coast Comic
And
Con a few years ago.
at some point, somebody asked him what they liked the best, and David Soul said, "Oh, well, I always liked the little comedy routines at the end of the show, where we would get dressed up
Uh
and be silly." And it's like, oh my God, you guys, you're just so not helping the slash fiction thing.
huh.
So I guess those scenes were just put in there to appease the actors or
Pretty
something
much.
like that.
In fact,
That's so funny.
the final 2/3 of the show's run can almost be
Mm-hmm.
cut into periods of various attempts to please appease Paul Michael Glazer and make him stop bitching to the press about how awful our show is. So
So you think
Yeah,
Paul?
I read that he like came close to leaving the show a few times, and he only came back at one point when he was like promised to direct, because I think he wanted to be a feature film director. And
yes,
he did
exactly.
direct a number of feature films after the
That's
show.
right.
Yeah.
And what has always made me laugh is one of the earliest films he directed could have been a Starsky and Hutch
Mm-hmm.
episode. It was about a mentally ill guy who killed people according to their phobias. And I think it was called Phobia.
Oh
So if
wow.
you have a pathological fear of
Oh,
bunnies, the killer would figure out a way to make bunnies murder you like that. And
That's not a bad idea. That's not a terrible idea. It's not,
no,
it
it's
sounds
not
kind
a
of cool.
terrible idea, but it was executed in a very Starsky and Hutch way. So,
mm.
Got it.
you know,
Wow. So like, yeah. So the mime thing was just it's kind of like Paul like walking up to the director saying, "Hey, this TV show's cool and all, but how can we work in my mime work
like
into,
like
into the
that.
sketch?"
It was just, you know, Glazer was just obsessed with the idea of I think what he would always say is he wants to make them more human, which is such an actorish
Mm-hmm.
thing to say. You know,
Right.
um, you're human just by virtue of being a human. So what they really mean when they
Right.
say that is usually like, I want to do something different. I'm tired of being a tough guy. I want to show that I can cry, or like that.
I want to show my versatility as
Yeah.
an
Pretty
actor.
much. And that was
And
Glazer's thing.
yeah, yeah. You guys mentioned that they're doing a lot of cons these days, and they actually were at my local Comic Con, the East Coast Comic Con in Secaucus a couple years ago in 2018. And I remember this because uh, like usually I moderate a few panels at the con, and I think this was on a Sunday, and I was just kind of wandering around the con because I was done with all my stuff, so I just wandering around talking to people, and then one of the people behind the con just comes to me and was like, "Hey, we need a moderator for the Starsky and Hutch panel. Would you
Oh my
be available?"
God.
And I was like, "Well, I've never watched much of the show, so I'm not too familiar, but I'll stick my head in the panel, because the panel had already started at this point, and apparently they were expecting a moderator and they didn't have one. um, but I stuck my head in there, and it was maybe like 20 minutes in, and they're just taking questions in the audience, and they're just riffing off each other, and I was just like, they're doing fine, they don't need a
Yeah.
moderator.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I just sat there, and I think I might have watched the rest of the panel, I can't remember, but that was like my one brief encounter with the two of them.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
But yeah. So I had a near miss with moderating a Starsky and Hutch panel, and I would have been vamping so much if I'd had to do that for real.
Oh, like remember that time you jumped
Well,
over your hood of your car?
I'm probably as close to an expert as you'd get, and I don't know how I would moderate a panel.
Yeah,
I have no idea what I would
I
ask them.
mean,
I would be torn
it's
between
I
asking really asshole questions like, so did you guys really hate working on the show as much as you all said you did? Or else just
right,
doofus questions like, what's your favorite episode? I don't
right,
know how I would
right.
moderate a panel and keep it moving and keep it interesting.
The
Mhm.
closest I had to do to that is at another con. They had Sam Jones and Melody Anderson from the 1980 Flash Gordon movie there. And they asked me like an hour before the panel was scheduled. They were like, "Can you moderate this one?" And I was like, "Okay, well, I haven't seen it in a number of years, but I've at least seen that movie, so I can do that." So I just spent the next hour just going on Wikipedia and IMDb to like, find good stories I could tee them up for. And fortunately, they were both great panel guests, so I didn't have to work too hard for that one.
Wow.
But yeah, that was a funky one.
Wow, you're like everybody's go-to guy for to be a moderator, man.
Well, at the East Coast Comic Con, at least,
Okay.
because they know me and I have a nice relationship with the folks running it.
Oh, far out. Shout out.
So, yeah.
Mimes. Wow, we really went on a tangent there.
Well, that's what we do.
That is
That's what we do. Yeah. In the middle of their mime acts, Starsky breaks off to go follow Reese as he's taking a phone call, and he hears Big Earl calling him and saying, "Hey, I've delivered that package for you. It's in the garage." And so he's thinking, "Oh, well, there's the big cocaine shipment that's in the garage." So they make a big show of arresting Feldman, and he shoots open the garage door, and then they open the garage door, and it's not a cocaine shipment, it's a pony that was a surprise for Feldman's daughter.
That's right. Dave Starsky kills a pony.
Yeah, and they just shot the pony.
That's right. So iguanas and ponies.
lots of animal abuse in this movie, and I read on IMDb. Let me see if I can find this. This apparently was not the only movie from this year that featured Ben Stiller killing an animal.
Oh,
let me see if I can find this.
Oh yeah, I think it's the movie Envy, right? I think it was.
Yeah, the movie Envy. He also kills a horse by accident in in the movie Envy, which also came out in 2004. So that's
wow.
If that's something you want to see, if you want to see Ben Stiller accidentally killing a horse, movies from 2004, that's your ticket.
Yeah, if you want to see, John Belushi accidentally kill a horse, watch Animal House. There's that too.
Yeah, I mean, killing horses accidentally, it's just good entertainment.
That's right. It's just a fun Saturday night.
Right. So I mean, Captain Dobie very angry at this, and he takes them off the case, even though I don't think he ever officially put them back on the case after he took them off the case earlier in the movie.
I think he officially suspends them as cops. He's like, turn in your badge and go.
Okay, because this moment I was getting a little confused. I was like, wait, they were already off the case. They were doing all this on their own time.
Now you're super off the case.
They're on double secret program.
Oh, you read my
mind! So, yeah. And we also come to a personal crisis between Starsky and Hutch, because Hutch learns that Starsky filed for a transfer 2 weeks ago because he was just like, "I can't work with this guy." He says all sorts of critical things in the transfer request.
Right.
And Hutch feels very betrayed.
So this is like we're at the low point where our duo is gone to separate ways, and we get a nice little sad montage while the Carpenters play in the background. It's pretty heartbreaking. We see them going their own ways, trying to, piece their lives back together. We see Starsky running on the beach, reminiscing about the time him and Hutch were running on the beach together, wearing T-shirts with their names on it.
Yeah.
Again,
which was actually
shot.
a publicity shoot for
that was an actual publicity photo of the two of them back in the day.
Yeah, of just Paul Michael Glaser and David Soul running on the beach
with their windswept hair.
White T-shirts.
Don't forget the windswept hair.
Yeah,
it was like something off
with windswept hair, and they're running on the beach together with white T-shirts that say Starsky and Hutch in rainbow letters.
Honest to God, it was like something off a Harlequin romance cover.
And you look at this in the context of the movie, and you think, "Oh, well, this is just a goofy thing the movie came up with." No, that's a thing they drew from the real show.
How could a movie come up with that?
No, I mean it's too insane not to actually be from the 70s, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty. It's heartwarming.
Yeah.
Then we see Hutch. He's getting, he's kind of going his own way. He's getting drunk in bars. He's getting drunk in Huggy's bar. Huggy's is very concerned. He's saying, "Hey man, you got to get out of here. You're kind of wasting your life away." And Hutch is like, "What are you talking about? Well, come on, it's Saturday night. We're here to party." And then Huggy's like, dude, it's Wednesday afternoon. What are you talking about?
Right. And then Hutch realizes, oh, it's Wednesday. That means I've got to pick up Willis from school. And then we cut to Willis, who had to walk to Hutch's house because there was nobody to pick him up from school, and he's PO'd, and he throws a football at Hutch's front door, and that sets off the explosive that they set there.
Right, because Reese's men planted a bomb at Hutch's house,
which is a very 70s cop show kind of thing. I think that happens in one of the Lethal Weapon movies too.
Yeah,
they plant a bomb at the guy's house because the detective's getting too close.
That's right.
So, what better way to get the police off your tail than to blow up a police detective's house?
That's a subtle way to tell them to back off.
Right. I mean, that's a thing I think happens in movies all the time, but I don't think it ever happens in life.
I don't think so. I don't think you got to go to that extreme.
I think everyone has internalized by now that murdering a police officer is a way to bring a laser focus to the investigation that they're working on. It's the exact opposite effect of what they want, which is to make it go away.
Yeah, I don't think at any point the police force would just shrug their shoulders and be like, oh, well, guess we got to leave these guys alone. They weren't on to anything.
It's like, oh, yeah, I guess Hutch left the gas on or something. That sucks.
Yeah.
That's a bummer.
So we see Starsky. He goes to visit Willis in the hospital, and it's awkward between Starsky and Hutch because, Hutch feels very betrayed. But they manage to forgive each other.
Yeah, because I think at one point, Starsky tries to make amends, and then Hutch tells him to screw off, and so Starsky leaves, and the Willis and Huggy Bear who are there says, "Hey, he was trying to apologize, man," and then I think Huggy Bear says one of my favorite lines, like, a great man says to err is human, but to forgive, that's divine.
Right.
And then I think Ken said, who said that? And Huggy says, I believe that was said by God, the greatest Mac of all.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can't argue with that.
It's a fact, yeah. It's a fact, man.
I mean, partly because it doesn't make much sense, but you can't argue with that. It's also a good sentiment.
And probably because God didn't say that.
Right. But the important thing is that Starsky and Hutch have now forgiven each other. They're tight again. And so they go to decide to track Reese down. So they tail him for a while. They're photographing him meeting with all the biggest drug dealers in Bay City.
Right. So it's the two of them.
You left out one of the great moments where they hug it out in the hospital corridor, and Starsky starts weeping, and then he denies that he's crying.
Yeah.
And that just cracked me up.
It's like, I'm not crying, you're crying.
Yes.
It was,
yeah.
But there was some lines like, I'm not crying. Cops don't cry. I don't, I'm blankety blank.
Yeah.
He's somebody that doesn't cry. I forget what it was, but.
Yeah, because we're still in the 70s. We're halfway between the macho man stuff and the sensitive Alan Alda types. So.
Right. It's like, no, I'm a man. I got hobbies. I do push-ups.
That was it.
Yeah. So I'll cry, but I got to lie about it.
That's right. It's very healthy for a man. A healthy way for a man to live. Absolutely.
Repress those emotions.
Yeah, they won't come back to haunt you.
Nope. So they're reconciled. They're tracking Reese. They're photographing him meeting with all the biggest drug dealers in Bay City, but they can't get anything on him because it's not illegal to just meet with drug dealers. Apparently,
it's not.
They're just talking.
They're just talking. You see any drugs? No. I'm talking.
Nope.
I'm talking to a drug dealer. I'm not dealing with a drug dealer. Totally fine.
Right. No. Yeah. It's all on the up and up.
Yeah.
And they're just like, they can't get too close because Reese knows what they look like, and he's familiar with their mind disguises, so they don't have many options.
Right. But then I think Hutch realized, they don't know what Huggy Bear looks like. So,
right.
Aha.
So they decide to send Huggy Bear undercover, and this was another gag I like. They have him with, an absurdly big wire. It's literally a microphone taped to his chest, and then on his side he's got like a walkie-talkie with a hard antenna sticking up on his side. I enjoyed that gag.
I do like how they have like all the old technology in
Mm-hmm.
this movie, and they kind of make fun of it. Like when Starsky goes jogging on the beach, he has those huge headphones with like the antennas sticking out of it as
Right.
his headset, and like whenever they use a walkie-talkie, it's like literally like a walkie-talkie the size of a shoebox. Like
Right.
stuff like that, I
Yeah.
got a kick out of.
Yeah. Yeah. So they go to this big fundraiser for the Nearly There Foundation, where they're sure that the drug deal is going to go down, but they don't know how it's going to go down. And we see Juliette Lewis as Kitty, Reese's girlfriend, and she's running like the coat check area, and all the bigwigs they're turning in briefcases with the money, the payoffs, and then they get tickets for the car raffle.
Right.
And
And then we learn that the coke is in the trunk of the car being raffled off.
right, right, and we also have some more great disguises for Starsky and Hutch. Starsky's this he's invented this whole character of I think the name was Milt Feldman.
I thought it was Maury Finkel.
Maury Finkel, that was it. Okay. And and he's got this whole salt and pepper thing going on, and Hutch has a cowboy thing happening, but he's not as committed of an actor as Starsky is, so he's a little out to sea with his character.
Right, and he has like Starsky has like a deeper voice, and that's where we get the whole "do it, do it, do it" thing. Like I think that was one of the things that kind of stuck in my head from the movie. I think that kind of became a thing. I remember a lot of my friends was saying like, "Hey, do it, do it," and I remember like the movie is do it.
Right, right, and like I say, another callback to the TV show. We have a nice absurd hat for Hutch.
Exactly. That
nice little 10-gallon hat.
could have just walked off the show in that outfit. The one of the things I noticed playing with my DVD sets here in the house is how the original show was never ever ever meant to be screened a bunch in a row. You weren't supposed to binge.
Oh yeah, you were like
absolutely you were not supposed to binge old television because they would reuse shots.
You realize when you watch a lot of those episodes back to back how repetitive those shows are. And how formulaic they can be at times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I did appreciate the nod to the big hat disguise, which was very much a go-to for Starsky and Hutch.
Right.
Even the episode that John likes about Las Vegas that he's brought up with Linda Carter. They go to get outfitted to go undercover in Vegas, and they go to Huggy Bear, entrepreneur, who outfits them like they're going to be starring in a community theater production of Guys and Dolls, complete with giant fedoras. And that shot ended up in the credits for like the next 2 years. It was a big deal for them. Big hats.
I wanted to watch some more of the old episodes in preparation for this episode of the podcast, but and they've got the first 2 seasons of Starsky and Hutch on Amazon Prime, but they're like $1.99 an episode, and it's like, do I want to pay like that much to watch an episode? Like Greg, you were telling me you got the season sets for just like $5 a piece, and that seems
about right. If they were, and I have tremendous childhood uncritical affection for it. I mean, it's like there are shows from when I was a kid where, I can see the zipper on the monster suit and I just don't care. It makes me smile. It makes me happy. It reminds me of hanging out with my friends and watching this stuff. But I would never spend real money on it. I don't think I could bring myself to go $10 for a season set of Starsky and Hutch. But $5 at a good
that's a good rule of thumb.
Absolutely, I'm in.
Yeah, that's a good way to go about it.
And I have to admit that I have had much more than $5 worth of entertainment about having it here at the house. Julie and I have
Well,
just
there you
laughed
go.
and laughed and laughed. My wife, it must be said, is a Reformed Baptist. She grew up very sheltered. She blushes furiously at any kind of double entendre. And we'll be watching an old
Hmm.
episode of Starsky and Hutch, especially from like the second season. And it'll be a deep, tense, dramatic moment. And suddenly Julie will just burst out, "Oh, for God's sake, just kiss him." And
Kiss,
it's
kiss,
10
kiss.
times as funny coming from her. I'm the one that you would expect to
Sure.
make the gay joke, but for Julie to go there just never fails to crack me up. And she's absolutely
It
sincere. She's just out of patience. It's like, why are you guys even kidding yourselves? Um,
it would have been hilarious if at the end of this movie we just had Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson just kissing. They just French kiss, and we go out on a freeze frame of that, and that would have been hilarious
I
because
would have
it
been
just would have
happy with the
weirded
two
so
of them
many
holding
people out.
hands down by the pier. That would have been
Yes.
okay.
Yeah. Just like really lean into it and just have them be a couple by the end of the movie. It's the exact same movie up until that point, but
Mhm.
just go all the way with it.
Hot.
Uh, so Starsky and Hutch, they figure out how they're transporting the drugs. They're transporting it through the car that's being auctioned off in the raffle, or raffled off. That is, I guess you don't auction in a raffle. Um, and so Hutch decides to pretend that he's the winner of the raffle, and they just kind of disrupt the process. And they go up in character, and they're like, "Hey, let's pop the trunk and get that new car smell. Do it, do it, do it." And then they draw their guns and reveal their identities. And yeah, I know it's a shocker.
Yeah. So then after that, there's a bit of a Mexican standoff because
Mhm.
that's when Reese realizes the jig is up, pulls a gun on Hutch, like
Mhm.
holds him, saying, "Hey, you shoot me, I shoot your boy here."
Right.
That's when we have Kevin pull a gun out on the audience, at all the other cops that are in the audience, and then like, "Hey, what are we
Yeah,
doing here?"
Captain Dobie's in the audience
Captain
too.
Dobie's in the audience, but he's also kind of drunk, the captain.
He's feeling no pain.
Right. And I think at this point, what we have, like, Starsky says, "Hey, give me the okay, I'll take the shot." Like Hutch and Hutch says, don't take the shot, don't take the shot, you ain't got it.
You do not have my permission. Do not shoot. I enjoyed that. I mean, it's like because on like a typical cop show or a cop movie, it'd be like, "Yeah, take the shot. I trust you, partner." But here he's like, "No, no, you cannot do this. I do not want to be shot. Do not shoot your gun."
Right. So then, like, Starsky puts down his gun slowly, and then, like, really quickly, he tries to take a shot to take from behind the back, tries to shoot Reese. He ends up shooting the
Yeah.
captain in the shoulder.
Yes. Yeah, he shoots Captain Dobie. He gets a little lucky in that Captain Dobie doesn't know who shot him, though.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's when Hutch says, "Oh no, it was Reese. He shot you, man." So at this point, we have Reese, Kevin, and Kitty just making a getaway with the dough. The guys chase after them. We got a good old fashioned car chase across the
Car chase through a golf course.
golf course. Yeah, I haven't seen that in a while.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty exciting. They make it to the yacht with the dough, and they're off in the waters. By the time Starsky and Hutch get there, they're already out to sea. Hutch says, "All right, you know what? I got an idea. Let's do this. Drive to the pier." So they drive to the pier,
Right.
and Hutch says, "Okay, I want you to drive off the pier and to land on that boat."
Right.
Which, how?
But that's the sort of stunt you see all the time on cop shows or probably more likely movies because it's a pretty big stunt.
Yeah.
So yeah, we see like after a little pep talk from Hutch and just talking about how good their partnership is. Starsky revs up the engine. He goes off the edge of the dock to land it on the boat, and we see the car just totally overshoot and sailing over the boat, over the yacht, and land in the water, which I thought was great.
That was pretty hilarious. For a minute, I thought they were going to make it, and the fact that they
Right.
didn't made it even funnier.
Yeah, they shot her from just the right angle because it really did look like they were going to make it, and then you see it just totally overshoot the mark and land straight in the water, which was great.
It's pretty fantastic. Pretty fantastic.
So,
They played that rousing music to make you think they were going to do it. Totally didn't
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the better gags in the movie.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And so we just see Starsky and Hutch. They come up in the water, and of course the bad guys are getting away. We see the boat going off towards the horizon in the distance, and Starsky's so upset that his car sank. He wants to dive down and rescue it.
Maybe I can save it.
Yeah.
And then we cut back to the yacht, and
Mhm.
I think at some point Reese sees that the yacht is stalling for some reason, so he goes down to check.
Yeah, the engine stalls. Yeah.
So he goes down to check it out. Huggy Bear's there, and Huggy Bear smacks him with a 9-iron because
he's like, "I found your 9-iron, bitch!" Whack.
Right, because Huggy Bear went undercover as a caddy with Reese, and Reese was pretty not nice to him. I think he actually slaps him at one point, which from what I've read, like Snoop didn't know that was going to happen.
Yeah, that was an improv, and Snoop finished the take, and then he goes, "What the fuck was that?"
As you should.
So,
as I would, as anybody would.
Indeed.
Right,
like motherfucker.
So Snoop defeats the bad guys, and then they capture it. We cut back to the police station, and we got a nice framed headline. It just says "Biggest Drug Bust in Bay City History." And so Starsky and Hutch, they're the hero cops.
Yeah, there's actually one scene that I thought was interesting too, where we see the two cheerleaders, Stacy and Holly, and they're talking to a pimp, and the pimp is trying to convince them to do like private parties, and then they're like, and they're saying, "Oh no, I think the cheerleaders have certain rules against that. We can't do that." And then the guy's like, "Well, they need to change that policy, baby." And that is, I mean, I'm sure most of you know, that was Don Magic Juan, who was a legitimate pimp back in the 70s, and who's like a good friend of Snoop Dogg.
I did not know that he was a for real pimp. Okay.
Yeah. He was like, he was also an old school. Like him and Snoop Dogg go back a ways. And yeah, like in the 70s, he was like a legit pimp. And like but now he's like kind of like a personality and an actor. And I mean, he said he doesn't do it anymore. So.
Okay, I wonder if that was perhaps just an off-camera conversation that they just happened to catch. He's just legitimately trying to turn out Carmen Electra.
It may be. It's like Amy Smart's like, hey, I'm an actress. I don't do that.
Yeah. But if this acting thing doesn't work out, I mean, you could make a lot of money.
You can get paid, baby.
And we also see Captain Dobie just talking with Huggy Bear and saying like, "Hey, there's one thing I don't understand. How did you sneak on to the boat?" And Huggy Bear gives him an explanation, and we see Hutch also go to Huggy Bear, and he's like, and it's weird. There was one of those briefcases with $5 million in it that just vanished. And Huggy's like, "Oh, gee, that's too bad. I hope you find that." Hey, did I tell you that my uncle passed away and left me a lot of money?
Check out my new fur coat, baby.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Starsky still down in the dumps because his beloved Gran Torino is at the bottom of the ocean. And Huggy's like, "Hey, cheer up. I found these two dudes who are selling their car, and I told them to come out." And so they go out to the front of the station house, and what do we see there? A brand new striped tomato with the original TV Starsky and Hutch, Paul Michael Glaser and David Soul making a little cameo appearance in costume.
Right. They're dressed exactly like Starsky and Hutch are.
Yeah. And it's nice to see them.
It's impossible to overstate
I gotta say, Paul Michael
how happy that scene made me.
Did you know it was coming?
I didn't. I had been kind of keeping an eye peeled for them because that's what often happens in these remake tribute movies.
Sure.
And I had been looking especially for Antonio Fargas to show up at some point.
It's so weird he didn't pop up somewhere.
From what I read, he was offered.
The weird thing is that
Antonio Fargas,
they showed up as themselves. They're literally Starsky and Hutch in a Gran Torino.
Yes. Yeah,
It was like
yeah,
some sort of DC
and
Comics Earth 1, Earth 2 thing.
yeah, they're like the Earth Two Starsky and Hutch, and they're 20 years older, and
Yeah.
or I guess more like 30 years older,
Because
considering this
I
was
was I was
2004.
willing to buy into the fact that it was just a coincidence until the police radio went off and both Starskys reached for it.
Yes, I mean because yeah, the Gran Torino is already outfitted with the police radio, and you see Paul Michael Glaser just sort of lecturing Ben Stiller, and you can see he's as possessive about the car as Ben Stiller's Starsky was. And Paul Michael Glaser looked amazing, by the way. He looked like he'd hardly aged. He's I don't know what that guy does, but he obviously takes care of himself.
Clearly.
Drinks a lot of water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Runs on the beach to Chicago songs.
What
Sure,
I
sure.
can't
Old age.
figure out is how David
Yeah,
Soul's
but
whole face got so different. He,
yeah, his face really
he
changed. Like
used to
he
look
gained a bit of
really
weight. He's got
kind
like
of
a mustache
ephemeral and
going on.
elfin almost.
Yeah,
And now the whole
yeah.
shape of his face has
But
changed.
yeah, yeah. There's also a nice moment where Ben Stiller's Starsky just goes like, "Hey Hutch," and then they cut to David Soul standing next to Owen Wilson, and David Soul just goes to Owen Wilson. I think he means you, and we see Owen Wilson give him like a little pat on the shoulder, which that was nice. It's a nice little passing of the torch sort of thing.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And also, as far as the Antonio Fargas thing goes, apparently, from what I'm seeing, he was offered a cameo role in this movie, but for some reason, he didn't show up. I can't find out what happened, but he was just like, nah, and just didn't show
I
up.
wonder what they were going to have him do.
I don't know. Maybe play like Snoop Dogg's dad or something.
I don't know. Like I wonder if the part they wanted him to play is still in the movie in some fashion.
Maybe deleted scenes. I don't know.
I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know. But so Starsky gets a replacement for his beloved Ford Torino, and we see him saying like, "Oh, well, I'm just going to take it easy, get used to it," and then we see him like gunning the engine and then jumping over a hill, and then the movie ends
Yeah.
to the tune of Aerosmith's "Sweet Emotion."
Right.
We get some fun credit scenes.
Right. And then we get like a whole collection of stunt mishaps with the car and all the cars that they totaled while making this film.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
And we see Vince Vaughn chucking Juliette Lewis over the side of the yacht, which apparently was in the movie, but they axed it when test audiences didn't like it.
Yeah, I guess that was too far.
Yeah.
Juliette Lewis is America's sweetheart. How dare you treat her as such?
I don't know. I would have been fine with that. That seemed like it was pretty funny, and her character was pretty annoying, so I would have been fine with that.
So overboard she goes.
Yes.
Heave ho.
So that's Starsky and Hutch. I mean, how did you like this as a fan of the TV show, Greg? How did it work for you?
It worked better for me if I didn't think about the TV show very much. See, I kept tripping over the idea that Hutch was crooked. The way that they differentiated them on the show was very different. Paul Michael Glaser in the original show was the streetwise, working class, meat and potatoes guy. And Hutch, David Soul, was very much the holistic vegetarian, interested in astrology, tried to get Starsky to meditate.
Mm-hmm.
He was into every 70s fad that came along. And that was how they differentiated them. Hutch was the hippy dippy free thinker, and Starsky was the straight ahead guy, but they were both very straight arrow policemen. And they would both get very emotionally upset at the idea of drugs poisoning kids in the ghetto and like that. And Huggy, I already talked about as being the failed entrepreneur, and I don't know. I would have liked it better if they had come a little closer to that, because we've seen I mean, honestly, a lot of this movie felt like a remake of the Tom Hanks Dragnet, except Joe
Mm-hmm.
Friday really was a tight ass, and putting him with a hippy dippy partner is something that you can generate a lot of laughs with. But it just felt off to see that
I can see
dynamic
that. Yeah.
here.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember like when this movie came out, and I couldn't find this clip, but I remember like some behind the scenes promo thing, and Ben Stiller was talking about, I think the concept they had for the movie was doing like sort of the lost pilot episode, telling about how Starsky and Hutch came together. And I think the concept was supposed to be like they were originally in the roles, but then they got fired, and then they hired the guys from the TV show. And the producers were like, "Yeah, make it like 40% less funny."
Mm.
so, so that was kind of their concept going into it, where so they were doing it slightly more of a comedy. And I think it's funny to look at it in that light, where it's like this is the failed version, and then the Paul Michael Glaser David Soul version was the real version. Um, but but yeah, I can relate to what you're saying, Greg, because I had some of the same, like when they made a movie version of the A Team, I had to kind of adjust my conceptions a little bit because they interpreted some of the characters very differently from how they did the TV show.
Yeah, and I said earlier, I really don't want to be that guy. There's just no. It's being a purist about a spelling cop show is not a hill I'm going to die on. But uh,
Right.
but it did throw me out a little bit. Watching it with Julie worked better because she is not invested. She was able to
Yeah.
enjoy it more just as a movie, and
Hmm.
and I found myself sort of unclenching about a lot of it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. You're able to see it through her eyes, and it's certainly a better movie than like either of the Charlie's Angels movies or the Mod Squad movie. I remember that being pretty bad.
Yeah. Dukes of Hazzard wasn't too great a movie either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they
So
they made
Yeah,
decisions that
well,
I thought were brilliant, and the big one was keeping it in the 70s.
oh yeah, that was so
That
much
was the
fun.
mistake
I
they
I
made
enjoyed
with
it
the
also
Mod
when
Squad was the idea that you could update it. It's like you really can't.
yeah, I mean exactly. Even the name, the Mod Squad, it's a dated name. You gotta keep that in the 60s 70s, whichever that one was. It was like early 70s, I
Yeah,
think.
68 to
yeah,
73.
Yeah,
And um,
yeah.
yeah. I
you know, again, another that was another spelling show where the cops were like super straight up, straight edge people
Hmm.
with this hipster veneer, and that was kind of the formula. The
Hmm.
idea that a cop could be even a little crooked or look the other way on little things never happened on a spelling show. It just
Right.
never happened. It was unthinkable. And
Yeah, because they were very black and white
they
in their
were
in
the
their
the
morality. Like
and I'm
like
sure that's a
like
lot
the
of what
Charlie's Angels, they didn't leave the police
Paul
force.
Michael Glaser was bitching
Go ahead.
about as an actor, was
Hmm.
always having to be Mr. Straight Arrow.
Right.
And
And I could see how that would get a little boring for the actors to play. Yeah. But yeah, they were very black and white in their morality. Like on Charlie's Angels, I remember, they didn't leave the police force because they were corrupt. They left the police force because they just ran into the sexism,
exactly.
and they were like, "No, we can be our own effective crime fighters. We can go undercover as belly dancers and fight crime
The
as you
other
do."
interesting
as you
thing
do.
is how far these shows drift over the course of airing. The Charlie's Angels
Hmm.
pilot is actually on YouTube as well. And the interesting thing is, it's kind of a good movie. I mean, it's a good, solid crime story.
Uh-huh.
the whole Jiggle Television
I
Farrah
should check that
thing
out.
didn't really happen until they were about halfway through the first season. That's a
Hmm.
lot of what happens with these shows is they get into these weird feedback loops. They read their own press. They start
Mm-hmm.
leaning into the shticks and the catchphrases, and they forget to have the story. Like,
Yeah, and they kind of become caricatures of themselves.
pretty much. And the caricature
Yeah.
is what people remember. So when they do the
Mm-hmm.
remake, anytime you do a remake thing like this, you have to play the hits. So you
Right.
can't call it Starsky and Hutch unless you have the car and you have Huggy Bear and all the trappings. And I would be interested. Was this movie a success? I don't even know. Did it?
I think it was a modest
Yeah,
success.
Yeah,
Darren, you usually have what they movies earned, right?
yeah. So this had a budget of 60 mil, and it made 170 mil. So I think it was a modest success, like you said, but I don't think it was as big as Old School, which was like Todd
Right.
Phillips' movie before this. And I think
but
people
I
were
would be
expecting another
willing to
big
bet that the reason
blockbuster
it's a
movie.
success is because of the fan following of the current actors in it, Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson, in a
Yeah.
comedy, not because of weirdos
Yeah.
like me
Yeah.
who have deep affection for the original show. 'Cause-
Yeah, because I mean, at the time, like, I mean, Ben Stiller was pretty hot. He was like in every comedy. Owen Wilson was like, he was on fire with it being in every comedy.
Yeah. It was just a few years after they did Zoolander, so
Right, right. Of course, everybody loves Snoop Dogg. So yeah, I think the fact that it was like sort of the same people that had that sort of were in the same like frat pack. That group of
mhm.
friends that were kind of in every comedy back in the early aughts. I think that's the thing that kind of drove it for the most part. Because like that is the thing that I've noticed a lot of movies that are made out of TV shows from the 70s try to do, where they're like, all right, well, we're going to do a movie from this old TV show, but how can we make it so that the younger audience can get into it? How can we get the kids in? And I think the kids were
Mhm.
already in because the kids liked Old School. And I mean, Wedding Crashers wasn't around yet, but, they liked Vince Vaughn and that. So that kind of drew them into this movie.
Yeah,
So I
yeah, and Greg, I think you're right that setting it in the '70s was a good decision because that did set it apart and that made it more fun. It would if this was in the present day, it would just be like this generic thing and it wouldn't be nearly as much
it
fun.
really wouldn't. And the '70s parts are the parts that I enjoyed the most. The
Hmm.
the riffing and the references to the original and all of that. And again, I come to it with such a skewed perspective. I don't know how successful that was for people coming to it cold, but I think it works more just as a movie than as a Starsky and Hutch
Yeah,
movie.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if you don't necessarily have to be that familiar with the show to enjoy the movie for what it is. So
No.
I think it does work pretty well on its own terms.
Anyway, but
Right.
that's
Absolutely.
my feeling
I
about
agree.
it. Since you asked for the '70s perspective, that's my perspective.
Hmm. Okay. Well, thanks so much for doing this, Greg. We really enjoyed
Not at
having you
all.
on.
Thank you.
Where can
I
people?
appreciate your
Yeah,
patience with
where
my
can people?
froggy voice that keeps blowing out.
No, it's
Oh no, I hope we didn't strain you too much.
yeah. Your voice sounds great. It sounds
Um,
like you're Stephen Wright or something.
yeah. So where can people follow you if they want to hear more of your cool perspectives on '70s TV shows and the
Well,
like?
I have been a frequent podcast on the guest on Radio versus the Martians, which can be found at
Mm-hmm.
radioversusthemartians.com. And you can they have a thing on their webpage that's just our panelists, and you can find my name and click on it, and you'll everyone I've been on will pop up. I've
Nice.
talked with them about Planet of the Apes and James Bond and Conan the Barbarian and all kinds of nerd stuff. Mike characterizes the show as the McLaughlin Group for nerds, which is fairly accurate.
Nice.
I write I try to keep to a weekly schedule. We've had some medical drama here lately, but I do write a regular column at atomicjunkshop.com, the same website that John writes for. And
Yes.
in between
Yes.
all those,
I've heard good things about them.
in
Yes.
between all those, I write adventure stories for Airship 27 publications usually, and you can find those on Amazon. Just my name and the words Airship 27, and it should come right up. But that's what I do.
Yeah. Yeah, Greg's a great writer. I've been the beta reader for a number of his Sherlock Holmes pastiches, and he's also got a original series called Doc Fix It right now, which is all about a handyman type who builds all sorts of super devices for supervillains in the early 60s, and that's a lot of fun.
That is a lot of fun. I can't believe I forgot to plug that. That's the current project. There's going to be a book collecting the Doc Fix-It stories out hopefully sometime next year. I'm just wrapping that project up now.
That's cool. Yeah, I've read the first 3 stories, and they're fun stuff. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the 4th one has in store. So
anyway.
So yeah, go over to Amazon, check him out, Greg Hatcher, Airship 27, and also go over to atomicjunkshop.com, and you can find a lot of Greg's columns there.
Far out.
So
all right.
So I think that's it for us for this week. We're going to be back next week covering another movie starring an SNL alum, a new movie.
Ooh,
the Suicide Squad movie starring Pete Davidson.
Wow.
So
I'm looking forward to I'm looking forward to watching this movie. I've heard nothing but good things about it. I think like on Rotten Tomatoes right now, as of this taping, it's at like 97% or 96%. And
it debuted on Rotten Tomatoes at like 100. So it's James Gunn. It looks like he did a great job with it. The previews look great. I'm a big fan of the original comic written by John Ostrander and Kim Yale. So yeah, I'm looking forward to watching that.
Yeah, it's a comic book movie, folks. We're doing it, The Suicide Squad. So stay tuned for that.
So that'll be next week. But until then,
wait! Don't we got to do our handles and stuff?
Oh, yeah, we do have to plug ourselves, don't we?
Yeah, that might help. And as always, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Darren Credible. That's DARIN Credible.
And you can follow me on Twitter at TrumbleComic, TRUMBULL, and the word comic.
And rate, review, subscribe, donate to our Patreon, all at Non-Productive.com.
Yes. Okay, so we've done the plugging thing.
Right.
So
all right, now
we can say, until then,
nerds out.
This has been a non-productive media presentation. Executive producer Frank Hablawi. This program and many others like it on the Non-Productive Network is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. Please share it, but ask before trying to change it or sell it. For more information, visit non-productive.com.